everyone. Welcome. Thank you very much. What an honor to be here with you today, this morning. Look, I'm here to tell you this is the most important election of our lifetimes.
Yeah, it is.
But even before I start my remarks, I want to talk about one thing. Before I even get to our remarks, I want to talk about something that happened this week. You may have seen, I just feel the need, I want to talk to you about Donald Trump's insane comments about Dr. Carson. Now look, I'm all for vigorous debate. Those of you that watch me in the debate know that I went after some of my fellow Republicans for being big government, big spend Republicans. I'm all for an exchange of ideas. I think that is a good and healthy process for our party. But when we have a Republican talking about, it doesn't even matter if he's talking about another Republican, we've got a candidate for president talking about somebody else. And he somehow manages to use the words child molester. When we've got a candidate who then turned on, I thought at first maybe this was a Saturday Night Live skit. I thought maybe this was supposed to be funny. But then I realized he was serious, and then he gets mad at the voters of Iowa. Folks, there is a line we should not cross.
Amen.
You may like Dr. Carson, you may not like Dr. Carson. You may like his policies, you may not like his policies. You may be thinking about voting for him, you may not vote for him. Look, I hope you vote for me, quite honestly. But whatever you think about Dr. Carson, there's a point at which we've got to say enough is enough. We will not bear false witness against each other, and that's what we need to do. You know, speaking about these debates, the media loves to say who's up, who's down, who won, who lost. And look, I'll leave it to you to decide who won, who lost those debates. But I will tell you one thing that is losing in the year 2015, and I want to talk about this for a few minutes. One of the things that is losing is the First Amendment to the Constitution. What do I mean by that? Let me give you two examples. Look at what's happening on the campus at the University of Missouri. Now look, I don't pretend to know all the details, and I'm certainly against racism in any shape, size, form, instance. But let's look at the political correctness that is taking root in our university campuses. I actually feel bad for these students. I thought universities were supposed to be places where they were taught competing ideas. Instead, these students are now being taught that they should be protected from any kind of ideas that they disagree with. These are going to be the future leaders. Can you imagine them sitting across the table if they're negotiating with the Chinese or the Iranians? Are they going to demand safe zones? Are they going to demand certain words not be used in those discussions? And it's not just University of Missouri. You saw in New Hampshire, they were told that you can't use the words American. You can't use the words rich. Those are politically incorrect. This politically incorrect nonsense has got to stop. President Obama has worked overtime to try to teach us that we're all victims. That's not the American way. I want these kids to learn how to stand up for themselves. I want these kids to learn about a robust debate of ideas. And if they disagree, they should be willing to defend themselves and articulate their beliefs. We're raising children. When are they going to become adults? When are they going to learn how the real world works? But this political correctness is a lot more dangerous than our university campuses. We're losing not only our freedom of speech rights, we're losing our First Amendment religious liberty rights as well. You've got the left now trying to take God out of the public square. You've got in my home state, you've got a principal up in Northwest Louisiana, the ACLU went after him for simply saying God bless you to some parents. You've got Christian florists, musicians, caterers are being told they can't follow their conscience. They have to choose between operating their businesses or following their conscience when it comes to traditional marriage. You know, enough is enough. There is no freedom of speech, no freedom of association without our religious liberty rights. Let's say this slowly so that even Hillary Clinton can understand this. The United States of America did not create religious liberty. Religious liberty created the United States of America. not be offended. They do have a right to the same freedoms that you and I want for ourselves. And the quicker they learn that, the better off they will be, and the better off America will be. But look, I didn't just come talk to you about our First Amendment rights. I came to talk to you about why this is such an important election. You know, I've asked audiences, I've been all over the country campaigning for president. I've asked people, what do you think is the worst thing that President Obama has done to our country? And the best answer I've gotten is he took the oath of office. But if you really try to answer that question, we could spend all morning talking about the $18 trillion of debt, about the EPA trying to regulate the water in our backyards, about Planned Parenthood selling baby parts across our country, record number of Americans on food stamps, record low participation rate in the workforce, a foreign policy where we won't stand with Israel. We're declaring war on trans fats and a truce with Iran.
That's good.
But one of the worst things this president is trying to do, he's trying to change the very idea of America.
That's true.
Every time you listen to him speak, it's all about redistribution, government taxing, spending, regulating, borrowing. Folks, the American dream is not to have the government take care of you. My parents came here almost 45 years ago in search of freedom and opportunity. Back then, they had never been on a plane before. They had never visited America before. They didn't even know anybody who had been to Louisiana could come back and tell them what it was like. And they came anyway. My kids don't understand this, but there was no Google. You couldn't look it up online. My mom was pregnant with me, and they left behind their friends, their parents, their families. They came the idea of freedom and opportunity. They were coming for the American dream. My mom, she went to school at LSU. My dad, he came here to work, didn't know anybody, got his first job literally calling companies out of the yellow pages. When I was born, a few months later, I was what we politely call a pre-existing condition. My parents' insurance didn't cover me, and I love what my dad did next. He went to that doctor at a women's hospital. No government forms, no paperwork, no Obamacare back then, no insurance. He simply said to that doctor, I want to send you a check every month until I pay this bill. That's how we used to do things in America. So I don't know how that worked today. I asked my dad, how do you pay for a baby on labor? I mean, if you skip a payment, do they take the baby back? What do they do? He said, you were such a bad little baby, we would have skipped a payment. I said, no, you're paid for, don't worry. I tell you that because my parents came here to chase the American dream. They have taught the American dream. They have lived the American dream. And that's what this election is really about. Are we going to fight the American dream for ourselves and our children? Or are we going to let our country go down this path of socialism? That's really why this is the most important election of our lifetimes. Now, since I mentioned my parents, I want to talk to you about how they came here. My parents, when they came to this country legally. Let's talk about immigration. A smart immigration policy makes our country stronger. A dumb immigration policy makes our country weaker. And today we've got a dumb immigration policy. So how do we fix it? The first thing, we don't need a comprehensive approach. We don't need a gang-based compromise. We don't need a 1,000-page bill. The first thing we need to do is we need to secure our border once and for all. We need to stop talking about it. We can get this done in 6 months if we were serious about it. Wouldn't be perfect, but we can get it done in 6 months. Now, we know why it's not getting done. The reality is we know why the left doesn't want to do it, but there are also a lot of Republicans in D.C. that don't want to do it.
That's right.
They've got big business groups that want open borders, amnesty, and Common Core, and they threaten these Republicans saying, if you don't do what we want, we won't support your campaigns. Folks, it is time to fire those folks in D.C. We've also got to put an end to sanctuary wants to defund them. That doesn't go far enough. I've got a package called Partners in Crime that would say to these mayors and these councilmen, if you want to break the federal law, we will hold you criminally responsible. Hold them as accessories to these crimes committed by people who shouldn't have been here in the first place. You lock up a couple of mayors, I bet you wouldn't have these sanctuary cities anymore. Folks, for generations, the great strength of America has been that we have been a melting pot. And that's been a great thing about our country, but now the left doesn't like that. The left says that is politically incorrect, that is xenophobic and culturally arrogant. Instead, we should be the salad bowl. That is the dumbest thing I've heard in a long time. Folks, we don't make anybody come here. If somebody doesn't want to be an American, don't come to America. And certainly don't use our freedoms to undermine the same freedoms we give to everybody. I'm tired of this divider-in-chief in the White House. Folks, we're not hyphenated Americans. I'm tired of this. We are not African Americans. We're not Asian Americans. We're not rich or poor Americans. We're all Americans, united as one. And let's be honest, this is what a smart immigration policy looks like. We say to people, if you want to come to America, come legally. Learn English, adopt our values. When you get here, roll up your sleeves and get to work. You know, I said something about immigration a couple of months ago on national TV that made Hillary Clinton upset.
Good.
So I've decided to say it again and again as often as I can. This is what I said. It's a very important point. With immigration, we must insist on assimilation and integration. Let's be honest. Assimilation without immigration is not immigration. That's an invasion.
That's right.
We see happening in Europe, we must not let that happen here. You've got second, third generation immigrants in Europe that don't consider themselves parts of those countries or societies or values. And folks, we must not let that happen here. This melting pot has been a great strength of America's for a long time. Now, I want to talk about these awful, awful tragic events that happened in Paris yesterday. We're all aware of the awful massacre, the killings. And we need to say prayers. We need to keep the people of Paris and France in our thoughts and prayers, the families that have been brutally victimized by these terrorists. You may have seen that this isn't just an attack on France or Paris. This is an attack on freedom and free people everywhere. You may have seen the French president declared a national state of emergency and closed their borders. Folks, it's time for us here in America to secure our borders and to keep our people safe as well. It is time for us to be honest about the enemy that we face. How can we defeat this enemy when we have a president who won't even be honest about the threat he faces? We need a president with moral clarity and honesty to tell us, look, we don't need political preference. We don't need a president apologizing for America, criticizing America, talking about the Crusades. We need a president who will say this: Islam has a problem. That problem is radical Islam. We need a president who will say this to Muslim clerics and leaders: it's not enough to condemn generic acts of violence. They must make it clear, they must go after these individuals by name and say that they are not martyrs. If you kill in the name of Islam, you are not a martyr. You are not going to enjoy a reward in the afterlife, but rather you're going straight to hell where you belong. today, we have a foreign policy where our friends don't trust us, our enemies don't fear and respect us. Hillary Clinton, the only thing she's ever won is this president's failed foreign policy. This is a serious thing. The president went to the Pentagon several weeks ago and said, well, we can't win this conflict with guns. It's a generational conflict. We're going to have to change hearts and minds. Folks, this is an evil, evil enemy.
Yes.
They are burning people alive. They are crucifying, killing Christians and other religious minorities. Mr. President, sometimes it does take guns, and sometimes you've got to kill evil terrorists before they come here and kill us first. You know, I've talked a lot about the challenges facing our country, both domestic and abroad. But I am here to tell you that I still believe our best days are ahead of us. I still believe we are blessed to live in the greatest country in the history of the world. You know, it's not inevitable. Our 40th president, Ronald Reagan, he reminded us that we lived in that shining city on a hill. But he also reminded us of this. He reminded us that every generation of Americans must renew for themselves those principles of freedom. We're at one of those critical moments. Previous generations have spilled great blood and treasure to give us the freedoms we've inherited today. I think this is our moment to decide what are we willing to do. The hour is late, but it is not too late for America. There will be a day of reckoning. And I want it to be known that when that day comes, we did everything possible to save the idea of America. This election is about whether we're going to let the idea of America slip away. The idea of America has created more wealth than any other civilization in the history of the world. The idea of America has done more to fight for freedom and the defenseless than any other civilization in the history of the world. Shame on those fools in D.C. that are giving away the idea of America. Shame on us if we let them do it.
Yeah, that's right.
As long as I've got breath in my body, I'm willing to fight to save the idea of America. But I can't do it alone. I'm not here simply to ask you to join a campaign. I'm here to ask you to join a cause. You see, when I was young, my dad taught me that Americans could do anything. I believed him then, and I believe him now. And I think you believe that as well. I think you've been frustrated these long 7 years, but you also believe our best days are ahead of us. I think you also want to believe again that we are blessed to be in the greatest country in the history of the world. And I'll tell you something, and this may surprise you, I'm a lifelong Republican. I'm a lifelong conservative, but I'm actually angrier at the Republicans in D.C. than I am at the Democrats. I mean, Bernie Sanders tells us he's a socialist.
Yeah.
The Republicans, they tell you one thing, they get elected, they do another.
Exactly.
We've got the surrender caucus. They've given up. They told us, give them the majority, they get rid of Obamacare and amnesty. We did our parts.
Yeah.
We volunteered, we voted, we donated, we got the majority. What happened?
Nothing.
This year, they've already given up on the fight to defund Planned Parenthood and stop the bad Iran deal. Folks, it is time to stand up to the establishment in both parties. It's time to fire everybody. I told you I couldn't do this alone. I need your help. I'm here to ask you to join our cause. I'm here to ask you to believe again, because I know this, with your help and with God's grace, we will and we can be victorious. It's time to take our country back from the special interests, from the establishment in both parties. It's time to stand up and rescue the idea of America and the American dream. It's time to send the message to Israel, we're coming. It's time to send the message to Iran, we will not allow it to be a nuclear power. It's time to send a message to our children. We are going to leave for them the same freedom and opportunity our parents left for us, the same freedom and opportunity that brought my parents here 45 years ago. It is time to believe again in the idea of America. God bless you.